Lewis Hamilton was having none of it as George Russell overtook him on track during the Japanese Grand Prix. But how will their partnership evolve? Hamilton was there in Singapore to capitalise on Russell's vital blunder on the final lap, while the team made a team order call in Hamilton's benefit at the finish of the Suzuka race. The treatment Hamilton is getting from the team is making Russell grow angry with the team. Wasn't he bought in to be the next superstar after all? For now, Russell seems to have to settle for playing the second fiddle for the Silver Arrows. But how long will Russell settle for this? At Mercedes, George Russell is up against an unforeseen dynamic. In general, Hamilton and Russell's collaboration has been fairly successful during the last 2 years. Mercedes clearly had one eye on the future as Hamilton knocked on the door of his record-breaking 8th World Championship, signing Russell in place of the cooperative but unspectacular Valtteri Bottas. If Hamilton decided he'd retire after that elusive 8th title, they needed to secure their future. That, however, has not been the case. Abu Dhabi 21 happened, Hamilton didn't break his record, and if he had considered retiring from F1 after doing the seemingly impossible, Max Verstappen's title triumph and the character of it assured Hamilton returned full of fire for 2022. Russell and Hamilton had a relatively easy year in 22, despite Mercedes' failure to master the transition to ground effect rules. Russell had a terrific start, pulling off excellent performances in a regular run of form, while Hamilton did the heavy work of reviewing weird settings and combinations in a frantic attempt to assist the squad progress. Despite their difficulties, it was a happy year, with Russell fitting into the position of the eager young learner beside the master, matching and occasionally beating Hamilton. However, that relationship has transformed this year, especially in recent months. Mercedes' technical direction adjustment, which included a concept modification on the W14, has resulted in a more consistent performance. With Mercedes' consistency and operational sharpness compensating for part of their pace deficit, podiums are out of reach. It simply requires battling Ferrari, McLaren, and sometimes Aston Martin. Mercedes are gently but steadily trying to chip away at the margin to the front, having adjusted to the idea that they're no longer F1 standard setters, and it's astonishing to watch how the drivers are reacting to it. Hamilton, the war veteran, has summoned his amazing energy reserves and is seeking the title with the same passion as if it were his first, rather than the elusive 8th. Russell, on the other hand, is in the terrible position of finding that the dynamic he may have been promised is no longer playing out. At the conclusion of his second season with Mercedes, he's up against an opponent that goes down as one of the greatest in Formula 1. Worse, rather than accepting the future of Mercedes' role that looked assured when he joined on 2 years ago, he now has at least 2 more years alongside Hamilton, and Lewis shows no indications of being content with a mentor-type job. Suzuka demonstrated the inverse. Hamilton is attempting to defeat Russell, and Mercedes' orders to Russell to stand aside indicate that the Brackley-based team is still eager to keep their superstar driver happy. With Toto Wolff have told Bono to call Hamilton and ask him to step aside when there was a slim chance of defending using DRS. One thing is certain, the IntraTeam Battle gives us a great watch. It was even one of the biggest talking subjects after the Japanese Grand Prix. Sky F1's Karen Chandhok says Lewis Hamilton and George Russell's friendship has a bit of needle between them. After the race, Karen Chandhok acknowledged he's loving the idea that the two drivers are becoming a bit upset with one another. There was a nice bit of needle though, as well, from George on the other side, wasn't it? He said. Where were they talking about the swap at the end? He clearly remembered the moment from Spoon Curve earlier on when it was, hang on a second, you asked me to be a team player now and that wasn't happening before. There's a little bit of needle going on now between those two drivers, which is quite fun to watch. And this little fight will eventually decide who will be the new team leader. So will George Russell be able to take leadership of the situation and the team? Russell has ultimate control over how his F1 career develops from here on. He had to adopt the mentality of my time will come for so long. With Hamilton opting to stay longer than expected during the winter of 2021, Russell's time is no longer in the future, it is now. He simply needs to start establishing his authority on Hamilton if he wants to prove himself to Mercedes and show that he is the proper man to lead the team ahead. Russell's problem is that it will not be easy. Russell of 2023 has shown himself to be capable of being on Hamilton's level on occasion, but not consistently enough to be deemed the appropriate man to inherit the position Hamilton has proved he's still fully capable of controlling. But, and this is no joke, perhaps what is required is not the tense but not hostile climate created by a Mercedes keen to retain a prudent management of the situation, but a collision that enables the simmering tension to boil over. And even after that, the question remains: is Russell the cutthroat, greedy, antagonizing, petulant driver that the top F1 drivers appear to be? Russell's crash in Singapore also couldn't have happened at a worse moment, since the truth of the situation has now dawned on him, even if he and the team both said the right things afterwards. The fact is that Russell choked under the extreme circumstances of the battle, feeling the moment to strike had slipped past, and knowing Hamilton was breathing down his neck from millimeters behind him, ready to pounce on the mistake that did come. At this moment, there are only two possible opportunities for Russell. After a season that he has labelled a disaster in terms of the Drivers' Championship, he may regroup during the winter and return in 2024 to show Mercedes that he can be a Hamilton-esque figure after Lewis ultimately hangs up his helmet. The type of driver who will shove his teammate into the escape area at Spoon Curve, rather than allow him to get ahead. Or he may keep performing at his current level, basically keeping up with Hamilton and demonstrate that he is just adequate backup for the driver who will surely emerge as Mercedes' true future. Who that will be is entirely up to Russell now. But a new problem is arising for next year, as rumours have been going around the paddock that Mercedes will be stranded farther down the picking order next year. According to F1 technical specialist Gary Anderson, Mercedes will enter the 2024 season as the fourth fastest team at best, after making no visible development since the start of 2022. Mercedes started 2023 intending to reclaim the title, but were forced to modify their W14 car following an unsettling performance in the season opening in Bahrain, and have made only little progress since a drastically altered chassis landed in Monaco at the end of May. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell were more than a second off Max Verstappen's pole time at last weekend's Japanese Grand Prix, with the fastest Mercedes car finishing 49 seconds behind the winning Red Bull. At the end of the race, Hamilton sounded disheartened, describing the car as such a handful and basically the exact same as last year. Former Jordan designer Anderson believes Mercedes' situation will worsen next season, since they've shown no signs of understanding how to return to the top, with McLaren and Ferrari expected to stay ahead of the pursuing group behind Red Bull. He said, "You would expect a team of Mercedes' stature, experience and budget. They are there to win, not finish 5th and 7th, to improve their car during the season, but they've not. It is very unlikely that the team will have a miraculous development over the winter. Looking at the current rate of progress within the top 5 teams, I would expect Mercedes to be at best the 4th fastest team at the start of next year. You have to prove to yourself that you understand your problems, and after 20 months and 38 races since these ground effect rules came into play, I'm yet to see this. A team cannot just put all their hopes into the winter. Not much has changed since the start of last year. They appear to go into a race meeting not having a clue what to expect. If I was at the team, I would not have confidence that the direction they're taking next year, whatever it is the correct one. They'll probably be heading in the visual direction of Red Bull, but the visual side is only a small part in the overall performance of the car. It is important to know exactly what McLaren, and to a lesser extent Ferrari, have done and what Mercedes have not. The most important area on these ground effect cars is what happens under the surface with the underfloor, but what we can see still makes a difference. You would struggle to find two cars more different visually than the W14 and the RB19, especially if you examine the radiator intake detail on both cars. The visual concept is completely different. McLaren, meanwhile, have shifted away from their previous concept in this area to one that essentially looks like the Red Bull. But then you also need to understand the design philosophy to get the best from it. Anderson explained, "The overall package is just not working, and I do not see they have a route planned out of this. Pinning your hopes on development between seasons is a little blind and is concerning. If they're not making progress when the cars are on track, how are they going to do that when there is no running in the off-season? You need to read between the lines of what you see in the wind tunnel. Last year, Mercedes came out and, as far as they were concerned, had a car with twice the downforce of anyone else, but could not get it in its working window and spent 6 months trying to do that. Their overall approach appears to have changed little since last year. So, will Russell be able to beat Hamilton in a car that is only good enough for the single digits point finishes next year? Or will Mercedes be able to produce a race-winning car, in which Hamilton will challenge for the title and beat Russell with? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.